Hey everybody, this is Brad Dyke reaching out to you to say hi. How you doing? Hope everybody is good. Today, this is a hardware video we're going to be doing here. We're going to be talking about just taking a minute out of our way and say, hey, what are the tools that I use in my toy shop, in my professional world, and everything in between? So I thought this would be a really cool video to do. It's a little bit on the odd side because, because it covers a lot of stuff. So let's start. So what I'm talking about is when you work on technology, right? When you have a system that you're going to construct, you're going to always have certain things that you want to make sure that are available at your discretion, such as a good screwdriver and so on, right? Well, that's not quite true because a lot of times if you work with server environments, you also need very specialized types of screwdrivers as well. As you can see here, this is a torque set. And it's very unique, but there's even more than that out there because when you're working on different kinds of pieces of electronics, right? May they be, a smartphone or a traditional flip phone, or it's going to be a Pi, or it's going to be, microelectronics, which you're engaging in. The key thing is, what are the tools you use to do that? Outside of a soldering iron and a screwdriver. Well, that's what we're going to talk to. First thing we're going to talk to is basically the tools that I use to construct or deconstruct servers, racks, network infrastructure. Okay? So the first thing I have is what we call your traditional specialized tools. In this case, what we call a micro electronics screwdriver kit set. I have several dozen of these, but I also have at my discretion at Harbor Freight, you can get this very easily, is a micro set style adapter set that will give you bits of different types of microelectronics, and then you have what's called the extender, and this gives you quite a variety of basically interactive style bit heads that can work with a lot of electronic based manufacturers. And I just got it at Harbor Freight about $10. It's not expensive. I know that there are products out there that are $100 for the same tool. I say nah, I go to Harbor Freight or other places because it's not about the greatest, latest, coolest, most expensive tool. It's about the one that's practical and can survive and last a long time. This little guy is also very valuable. It can be bought at any hardware store. It has a standard number 2, both for the standard screwdriver and the Phillips screwdriver. Great tool. You can get them anywhere. You can also get the static versions, which is basically 6 of them that has number 1s, number 2s, and number 3s, but the heads don't change. And then you have what's called the micro handler. And this guy is pretty cool because if you look, it comes right out the top. It's got a mini hex head on it. And inside you have a variety of different bits located, as you can see here. And when you're not using the bits, you just put the bit into the housing, or you pop it out and you put it in. And it's great for micro torquers, or in this case it is I've got the micro torquers here, and I got standards, and I've got Phillips heads here as well. Very good tools, but everybody's going to ask the question, why are you using a screwdriver when you've got 25 screws to put in? Well, I don't, because I use this guy. You can purchase this guy anywhere. He's a very basic electric screwdriver that uses 2 AA batteries. It's called the General Standard Micro Electric Screwdriver. You put your 2 AA's in here, and there are several versions of this particular electric powered RPM style. I'd say it gives you about 10 RPMs per 5 seconds, which is a decent speed. And as you can see, it is known as the General Electric mic. And of course, I can take my bits off. It's compatible with my other sets of bits, so I can have any bit I want. It just makes it easier not to have to sit there constantly turning, trying to get the screws in, right? So along with that is also comes something that's really important, because how many zip ties do you have, or band ties, or restrictors, or tie-offs, and stuff like that you have out there? And that is going to be getting yourselves a pair of dikes. Now, let me tell you a secret about wire cutters. This is a pair of dikes here. Yes, no pun intended with my last name. This guy right here is a micro wire cutter, not to be used for general wiring. So what I got for that requirement is I have a big version of the same kind of setup, and it cuts much larger wiring, but not good for micro wiring. So it's important that you carry yourself 2 sets of these to work with the proper stuff, because like I said, if you're dealing with micro wiring like this, you need the little guy. But if you're dealing with the zip tie that you see on this, use the big guy. Micro dikes don't do well in cutting zip ties. Matter of fact, you run the risk of breaking them. They're not very strong because they're not designed to be strong. They're designed to be a micro lens blade to cut small base line stuff. Now, in regards to cutting things like Cat5 cable, which I'll kind of go into this a little bit, what you want is what is known as the Network Man's scissors. These work really great. They sharpen very easily, easy to dismantle, come together, $5. Excellent deal. You can also go to Harbor Freight and get the $1 version. These do okay. They don't last nearly as long, about a year or two. Then you just throw them away because they're $1 a piece. But I use the more traditional style, which is in my network pouch, right? Which we put on our side of our hip when we're doing that. And with that, I'll segue now into networking. Now, yes, I used all of those tools you see here, but with one exception. I almost forgot. It's a Hercules style drill. Cheap, functional, lasts, really good. LED emitter on the front, low cost battery, good, easy maintenance, easy to work with. You don't need to read a manual to use it. And there's also another version of that same Hercules style, which is a heat gun. And this is good when you need to deal with your soldering iron and you want to depopulate circuits off of a motherboard. Use this guy, it all just falls off. But I won't go into that part very much right now. So we're now in the discussion of what we call RJ45, networking and fiber optics, and so on and so on. Now, the key detail here is to also remember that most people, unfortunately, get one of these things. If you look at it, it's terrible. I hate these things. It's angle-based. In other words, it's a lever, and it uses a lever action to complete the transaction. The only problem is the left side here going to the right side is the weakest of the crimping process. So when you put an RJ40, RJ45 or an RJ11 in here, the left side is not as well crimped as the right side is. I'm sorry, the left side is crimped better than the right side is crimped. So how do you fix that? Well, I keep this around because it's just a pain in the butt to have, but it reminds me that this is what you want. It's called a universal direct pressure equally across all connection points that are being crimped by the crimping device. And it has the wire cutter right down here, and it can do RJ11, RJ45, and so on, and a special edge connector as well. And as you can see, it's spring locked too, so that's nice. This is what I use. I have a wonderful success rate with using this tool, along with using my scissors to preempt the configuration of the wiring so that I can crimp my wires, so I've got good specialized custom made cables that I want to do Cat 6 and down. Now, with that comes the nature of temperature, and temperature is important because as we're talking about networking stuff, sometimes you might discover that you have a problem with a machine, a backing connection, a switch that doesn't seem to be like running a fan or something like that. So at Harbor Freight, yes, I say Harbor Freight again because it's really a good place to go, they have this $50 laser thermal emitter that once it hits a target, as you can see here, it will give you a heat rating, and it says it's 84 degrees because it's a really hot day today. And it will then give you that output on the back, and it can help you identify when a fan inside a network switch or something like that isn't working very well. It's not moving enough air, and that unit is starting to overheat. Very important detail. But the other important detail is the wiring that you've created. You have to check it. It's important. So to do that, we use what we call a toggle combination probe set. This is it right here. It's a great little guy. And it has a local direct plug-in sensor set, which will give you a result anywhere you want. So if you did an RJ45 patch panel and you've got a patch output somewhere, you can plug this guy right into it, and you will be able to act like you're connected to an RJ45 head. And it will enumerate the wire connections to tell you if all your wires are in the right place. Now there's another version of that exists, and it's this guy. He's another dongle, but he can do both cable and patch panel. And he does exactly the same thing. He, if you've got an 8-wire mesh or an RJ11 mesh of wiring, it will emulate it exactly, send it back to the tester, and this is the tester, to give you what you need to know. Now, the tester itself is a Fluke Network Microscanner Pro. You can still get it. It runs about $150. Great tool. It does ohm check, impedance check, distance check, and wiring check. That's all you need. Now, you can use what's called an analog version of this, but they can only give you ohms check, and they can only give you wire check. They can't give you distance check. I graduated to this. Great unit. Again, that's the Fluke Networks Microscanner Pro. Mine is like 15 years old. But the other problem that can happen is the impedance side of the equation, or the wire tracing of the situation. For instance, I ran 25 cables. I built 25 cables. Now I'm trying to sort through them, and I can't quite find what I need. So I need to put what's called a tone probe output. And if you look, the tone probe has either wire outputs, or it has an RJ45 output, and it has a RJ58 style cable TV hookup as well. And what this does, it puts out a tone, right? An electrical tone, which then I use this little guy right here to hunt down the tone. And as I put it one wire at a time, as I'm working with a wire, right? As I go through from one wire to the next, it's eventually going to go teet, 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 and I found the wire I'm looking for. Isolate it some more to get a confirmation of the signal, and I found my wire. It's a great little Fluke. It's called a Fluke Networks IntelliTune Pro. It's a great tool, not expensive. And then that leads you to my next tool, which is called leakage. Wires leak, endpoints leak, electronics fail, electronics do weird things. This little guy, you can buy this anywhere. It's basically an electrical field notifier. Now there's one that's made by Black & Decker. You can get it at Lowe's. It runs about $15-20. And basically what it does is when you press the button like that and you get close to something, it will start to make noises. It will go zzz. Well, if power is properly turned off on a device, or an output is not putting out voltage, and you do this and you check it and you still hear a buzz, then you've got something wrong with the switch, not your wiring. Super awesome tool. You can get it anywhere you want. Super cheap. Lowe's, Harbor Freight, anywhere. What you're looking for is a voltage detection sensor unit. You can't get this anymore, by the way. And it's a good reason, because it uses watch batteries, which suck. The other ones use AA batteries, or AAA batteries, actually. Stand corrected. Now, with that, everybody has the question, what's your favorite punch-down tool? And what is a punch-down tool? Well, a punch-down tool is pretty simple. This represents what we call 3 types of cable placements. This is for a punch-down. You use this guy to punch down RJ45 wiring, which is for, let's say, for instance, an RJ45 port. So it can be for, let's say, Cat 3 wire, Cat 6 wire, Cat 5 wire, anything in between. Punching down to a board, and that board has a special output right there. Now you can also flip it, and it can now become a DMark unit. And if you look there, you'll see that it is squared off. It doesn't cut. All it does is push down. So for all you guys and gals out there who walked into a telecom room and you see those big white long stanchions with all the wires going to them and they're being put down into those, this is the tool that does that. Now, what are the other tools that do that? Well, RJ58, is basically a cable TV cable. It's got a coaxial setup in it, and the coaxial cable itself has a small little copper wire in the center, and the impedance field of the shielding versus the wire itself allow you to be able to move quite a bit through. This is a very common interface for most home systems because they'll have what's called a RJ58 cable transceiver coming in from the provider, let's say Time Warner. The cable connects up in the back, and then you have an RJ45 that comes out the front that connects to your router or is providing your routing functionality altogether. But that cable, you have to have the proper tool to construct it. And by the way, this is a touchy topic because the cable companies don't want you having tools like this, because that means you could find their derelict wire. That's wire that's not currently in use, but still passes signal. And you could crimp it all up and start getting into it and start trying to get cable service for free. Another variation tool is called a control crimper, and that's this guy right here. And he brings down and crimps down sets with a lot of specialized pressure to get the platform. And this is the DN288 series version crimp. It's decent. I don't like the fact that it still has a little bit more torque here closer to the hinge point than it does on the exterior, but the most important component that matters is the one that's in the inside, so it's still a decent tool to use. Now with that, sometimes, believe it or not, you're doing work on stuff, like you're tinkering in your lab and you're kind of crunching and munching, and let's say for instance you have a piece of an aluminum, let's say like an L bracket. Here's an L bracket right here. It's a filler plate that's put in the back. It's in the shape of an L. See? You need one of these. Now, this is a poor man's version because I have strong hands. But what it does basically is it's got a small nibbler head on it. You see that? And that little nibbler head can take a chunk out of metal. See? So this is called a nibbler. And you can just sit there and hit that same spot over and over and over until you've gone all the way through it if you wanted. But the nice thing about this little guy is it gives you basically a 1/4 inch cut that's a little less than 1/8 of an inch cut in, as you can see here. There you go. Let's see if I can get a good clean focus on that. There you go. And this allows you to do on-the-fly modifications like I do constantly, just to get the things to fit just right. Or if I need a little less of this here, or a little less there, I can use the nibbler to scram that away. Now, with that being said, I will also say that I have other key tools that I use that are really valuable in my work, and that is, of course, my 4 terabyte SSD drive. That's USB 3. Always keep it, guys. You never know when you need it because it never fails. Sometimes you're getting ready to do some work on something, and you better back it up, right? Another very valuable is the HP external Blu-ray burner DVD, which is really great because it does dual and single mode. Dual mode means you can use it on old boxes that just don't have enough voltage with a single USB output, so you can use 2. Or it can just run with 1 on the more modern chassis, and it's very, very, very capable and competent in meeting what we need. Now, another thing that's important, because a lot of stuff that which we have is USB based, is you need one of these guys. Now this is basically a 10,000 ohm or micro ohm style USB battery source backup, and it is phenomenal. It works really well. You cannot get this, but it is an example of the environments that which you can work with. It has a lot of functionality in it. Will run for about 7 hours. Output power for USB devices. Very functional. It has a high voltage and it's got a 2.4 amp output and a 1 amp output, which is valuable because sometimes you don't need to put output. You just need to have a constant stream of voltage. This guy is great, and I do recommend that people have these because of the value they produce for your end result. And then the next thing I recommend, because when we work with electronics, we're going to come across things that are not going to be very nice. Okay, so As an example of that, this is a CO2 based, which is important because CO2 is inert gas. As you can see, here's the cylinder. And the cylinder is closed, but when you put this guy on and you tighten it down, it will puncture the surface area and it will give you CO2 discharge. The good news about that is you don't have to carry a big can of air, right? Which is, you know, something like this monster. Big difference, right? Works really well. Breaks down even smaller because when you don't have a cylinder in it, this is it. That's pretty easy, right? Cleans very efficiently, very easily. Can be taken apart by hand. No special tools are needed. Great tool. It does a great job. You can get that at Cyber Guys. And that's where I got mine. And of course, a non-perforated cylinder will look like this, and it has no hole in it. Unlike one that is spent, it has a hole in it, as you can see there. But the overall goal there is to give you the ability of setting yourself up in such a way so that you can connect and do everything you want to do effectively. Now, the next thing I'm going to show you is kind of important, because we're all poor guys and gals, right? We don't have a lot of money to our disposal. So on the networking side, we use these little guys. These are 8-way coupler sets, and if you look at it, it has an RJ45 here and an RJ45 here. Now, an important detail about having these is I recommend that you have them properly spec'd, because this is a Cat5 only TX100. Put this on a 1 gigabit and it can work well, because the quality of the metals are lower. Get yourself a 1 gigger, or you can get yourself a 10 gigger. But remember that 10 gigs, 1 gigs, and TX100s have different potential impacts, so use the right one for the right kind. It's very valuable. It's also applicable for video outputs, because we're broke, right? We can't afford to have all the versions of everything in the latest and greatest. Then we find out, oh crap, I'm connecting an old system and I need a 15-pin output for my DVI output, or worse, I have HDMI, right? Now this guy is an HDMI coupler, because how many people can afford a 30-foot long HDMI cable? No. But you can take 2 6-footers or 2 10-footers, use this guy, and you've got yourself a 20-foot cable. Really great when you have to reach around and, you know, get to something. Super valuable. And there are variations of those HDMI outputs. For instance, like if I show you this one, you have what's called a full pinout setup. When you look at this one, you have a cross-set pinout, which is different. So make sure that you keep them in a small little bag, because it's always beneficial to have that. And of course, some cables to support you in doing what you're doing. With that, when it comes to dealing with display screens that end up being in bad shape, I use something called the Screen Cleaner Pristine Clarity. And it's a really great, there's a picture of it right there. And it's really great. It's very easy. It is important that you clean your display screens correctly, or you run the risk of damaging the displays. And remember always, you have to use a microfiber cloth when you do the cleaning. With that being said, the only thing left is my poor eyeballs. So into doing that, I have a couple of recommendations for you. First, when you're dealing with stuff, you're dealing with the nature of two things. One, a mess, right? A spaghetti mess. So who's your favorite buddy? A zip tie, right? Now, not all zip ties are the same. You want to do what's called a tier quality zip tie, not a generic hardware zip tie, because those zip ties are sensitive to sunlight and are prone to temperature. They snap, they break. The other versions don't. They are made of a different type of polymer compound and are much more resilient, and the interlocking mechanism of the zip ties work more effectively. I do like zip ties, but I use zip ties with one of these. And what this is, the problem with your eyeballs is there's just too much of a mess, right? So any professional who's going to look at something, they're going to clean it up to some degree, right? So use this with a little stick pad right here, put it in place, take your zip tie right like that once it's in place, and then you secure your cabling. And it can do it both ways. It can go sideways or it can go up and down like that. So as an example, Now, why did I bring that up? Because you need to have yourself the ability to manage things, and this is a what do you call it? Velcro style unit. It's it's double-sided Velcro, so you can cut it and just make a small one like that, or you can use it for a large bundle of wire and use it to secure. Another way to do it in a much smaller format is wire ties. They work. I always have them. I don't know why. They replicate like bunnies, but they're valuable. Now we're at the point asking the question. Your eyeballs. Now you've gotten everything put away. You've gotten everything put together. You've done everything, but now you got to get it down to the jumper level. And what do I mean by the jumper level? Well, I mean, you got to go all the way down to the jumper level, right? So how do you do that? Ta-da! 10x or 15x readers. That's what you use. Now, you can't read they're not very good for distance, of course, but from here to the camera, I see myself clearly and without any issues. Great to use, but not the only tool out there. The other component is what we call literally just a standalone magnifying lens, and it does great too. By the way, make sure you always secure your lenses, because it sucks when you're looking through scratch lenses because they are made of plastic. But this guy is excellent. You know what's even better than this? When you use them together. That's right. This is a multiplier on the multiplier. That's valuable. But do you have to keep that? No. What you also do is you can do what's called a variable. A variable headset. This one is from Harbor Freight. It's got basically all the variable sets, plus it has the magnifier effect here as well. This does work, but can be somewhat claustrophobic. If it bothers you too much, just keep it a little higher and go up and down like this, and you'll be okay. And you can do one eye ratio where you do local vision here and then detail vision here. You know, that's just a matter of opening and closing an eye to keep them properly spec'd. And at that point stage, these tools, which I don't normally carry them all at once, they go into different bundles, which I pull out as I need to pull them out. I also have one last thing that I have that's valuable, and that is a stockpile of cables that I can prefab anything. I have a C case of multimedia kits and the ability to read CD-ROM drives, where I also have the images of operating systems. And yeah, you can still use CD-ROMs, by the way. They're not used very often, though. But the whole point is that you're able to do quite a bit. Now, with all of this, there is one last thing I do kind of recommend. It's great, especially for you guys that don't have printers, 3D printers, and things like that. You can do what's called the double-sided procedure. And the double-sided procedure is tricky, but it can work. Remember those little things I showed you like this? You know, it's a zip tie holder. Well, if you have what's called the 3M double-sided tape, which basically when you pull it apart has a sticky side on one side, and then when you peel off the outer skin, it's sticky on the other side. This is a great mounting point which you can build up on. I've used this 100 times. You can cut like 15 of these things together and create yourself a nice, healthy foundation, and then you can use that to help support some logic card or something like that. And when you get hardcore and you don't want it to move, you upgrade to the 3M Gorilla Glue, kind of like double-sided. This stuff is incredible. It uses an epoxy bond, which is much more powerful than a standard adhesive bond that you have with the typical classic double-sided tape. Once you put this stuff on, it's going to be very difficult to get it off. So don't use it unless you intend to use it the right way, in my book. Now, with that being said, are there other things which are important that you should consider doing and having in reserve? Yes. And those are basically, first, depending on what you're working with, but if you're working with motherboards like I do a lot, the Nibbler is important. You have this guy right here. And when you're refreshing a motherboard, you need these little guys right here. This is Arctic Clean 1 and 2 solution. Right there you go. Excellent. Works great. Very easy to work with. You will take yourself with you, your Q-tips. so that you can properly clean the processor or the integrated chipset that you're doing. And it never hurts to have a set of MX4 or a TM30 a thermal cooling paste, so that when you clean off the old thermal paste, put new paste in its place, this keeps it all right, because the Arctic Clean takes it all off, and then it nullifies the effects of the cleaning agent, so that way you're able to, using the second solution, have a pristine clean processor. Then you put your ointment on there for your thermal paste, and then you put the heat sinks back on, and so on. Great to have those resources if you have it. Now, of course, I have it in my lab most of the time when I do this kind of work, but I do have to sometimes get mobile, and I take stuff with me in my little tool bags. And I'll say that Harbor Freight again comes to the discussion, because they have these small micro carrier bags that are really spectacular when it comes to handling the ability to basically do a lot of functional compartmentalization of your different tools for different roles. It doesn't hurt to do that. It keeps your tools clean, it keeps them secure. You'll know where they all are when you don't have them. And so that leaves one last key detail that is valuable. And I'm going to go back to this tool because it detects voltage leakage. Very important. And I refer to this guy. Super cheap, $5. Pilot light on one side set for 120 volts, negative, positive on the other. Can check any output cabling that provides power anywhere. Easy, lights up, it works. If it's not lighting up, it's wrong, or you've got a break in the power cord, or you've got a break in your power feed on your power supply. If a power supply is leaking, this little guy, excellent for doing that. It will find that it's leaking, and you've found the source of drop in voltage load issues and things like that because of the bleed off effect. Great tools to have, super cheap. Again, this is a 120 volt pilot light check tool. You can get it anywhere. As you can see, it's very stupid simple, and that's very good. Let me show you one other version of this you might like. Okay, now this tool is a little bit more advanced. It's very easy to use. As you can see, it has clear indicators of what is good, what is not good, and what's acting up when you have an issue. It has 3 pilot lights involved opposed to just 1 pilot light, and it can diagnose the condition of your outputs by the plug-ups. Now, the thing about this is nice is if you put a plug-up set up and flip a normal PC cable over to a standard 3-prong output, you can just plug this guy right into that, and it will light up says it's good, or it will light up and say it's bad, because these cables do go bad. Now, what I'm referring to, let me show you. I'm referring to these cables. See that head right there? Well, there's actually an adapter, a small little 6-inch adapter that will take this output and make it back into a standard plug receptacle. This is a plug. The receptacle is the one that takes the plug. And you plug this guy into that, or if you don't want to get expensive, you can plug in this guy, and you can test those lead outputs by putting your contacts on the wires. This is about $15. This is $5. So with that being said, these are great tools. They're excellent. They're cheap. They're efficient. Some of them I made myself, like my little 4 terabyte SSD mobile drive. Have fun with that. Have some excitement with that. Have some really good tools so you can really be able to have all the things you need when you do some playing and building and checking. I won't kid you. This guy is hard to use, this Nibbler, but I've used it on my rack enclosure way over there. You see that? I've used it on everything, even laptops and even cell phones. Just a little bit of a snip, and you're good to go. Wow, it's easy, it's efficient, and you don't have to go out and buy these crazy Nibblers that have batteries or electrical outputs. It's just it just takes a little bit of hand power to squeeze that, and you've got yourself a little bit of metal nibbed off. And sometimes that's all you need to do. And the last thing I'm going to say it now because it's a real big pet peeve of mine, is if you get these kind of drill bits. Let me show them to you. These types of drill bits, if you take a look at that, see how it's golden in color? Yellowish, like gold? These are crap. They are. They're basic steel with a titanium coating. They break. They snap right off. It can snap off in the first 5 times you use the drill bit. I kid you not. The tips wear down. It's okay to work with wood. It's okay to work with drywall, soft materials and so on. But in our job, in our industry, what you need is this. This is a cobalt drill bit. You buy one of these for 50 years. That's how hard and strong these are. These are extraordinarily strong drill bits. They're durable. They can take it. They stay sharp. And they'll cut you. That's how resilient they are. Unlike this guy, which is basically, when you buy these, buy 10 of them, because you might end up using all 10 to do a simple job. Buy one of these, that's all you need. It's important because these guys create, unfortunately, what I call a problem with electronics. They can cause almost the effect of a magnetic field. When you're drilling into a tin PC case, right, or a server chassis, and you notice that the bits kind of hang on, in other words, they don't let go of the frame, that's because they're magnetized. Cobalt doesn't do that. The bits that you drill that come off, in other words, the dust, the metal dust that comes off of your silver rack chassis or your PC rack chassis, just flakes off, and you can blow it off or vacuum it up. But remember, if you use a vacuum around electronics, bad news. Better to use dust blower, blow it off, and then vacuum it up on the floor. Vacuums can create static electricity, unlike air blowing, which doesn't. So, with that being said, remember, not the greatest thing to use on our equipment in the industry. I use this guy all the time. Zero risk, no issues. You don't even have to put oil on them. I mean, that keeps it nice and clean. These are extraordinarily great bits to work with. And now, I won't kid you. To get a whole set of these, it's about $70. To get 190 of these, it's $20. Go with these instead. Trust me, you'll like it. Well, this is Brad Dyke. I hope this helped. This is just to kind of give you an idea of why I got all this stuff on the back of my walls. And yeah, surprisingly, once or twice or 20 or 50 times a year, I'm pulling this stuff off the walls and using it. So I wanted you to kind of have the gauge of all of this, which we're doing here, and kind of see what would it take to have the tools to get this accomplished. Now, the last piece of this is, how much time did it take for me to get all these tools together? I would say about 5 to 6 years, to be honest with you. It took a year or two to kind of gauge what I really needed. The harder part was finding it. And that was kind of like the cool adventure of it. Because I had to go out there and I bought a couple things and I was like, that didn't work very well. I think I need something better, or I need to go this way instead. Hence, electric nibblers are very difficult to control and work with. They're designed for cars and, doing work on fenders and things like this. But these hand nibblers, that was a little bit of an adventure. Hopefully you don't have to go through that same experience, but it gives you an idea of kind of like what's out there. So I hope this has all been beneficial. This is a little bit different of a hardware review, but I think it's valuable. I hope you guys have a great rest of the week, and God bless. Take care.